Nina was a finance automation analyst until recently at Milton Keynes University Hospital. And we've got examples from Innovative Solutions, a bit more Power Automate desktop going on. So you get to see a sort of the difference between that and a bit of Visual Basic for those that want to look at how that's working as well. So Nina, are you with us? Thank you very much.
Hello.
Right. Hello. Crack on. Thanks very much for joining us.
Okay, no problem. Shall I share my presentation then?
I don't know if Becky has it, but if you've got it, yes, that would be, if that's okay. If you'd like us, oh, there we go. Fantastic.
All right. View as so the normal.
There's already someone cheered for VBA here, so clearly there's
Thank
some
you.
VBA.
Yeah. Still has relevance. It still has relevance. Yeah, it's been a while since I've done this, so bear with me. Oh, slideshow might help. Okay, is that all right?
Good. Yeah,
Are people just seeing the slides?
Yeah, bang on.
Lovely. Okay. So good morning, everybody. I hope everyone's feeling rested, refreshed, and ready to go, or as much as possible on a Tuesday morning. I've previously worked as a financial automation analyst at Milton Keynes University Hospital. Before that, I've been a technical analyst in various roles, mainly in transport and logistics, and I've also been a continuous improvement manager. I've used VBA since 2008 and Power Automate Desktop since 2023. So an outline of what I'm about to present. I'll give everybody an outline of robotic process automation, my own spin on it, and also give some examples of RPA, such as the trial balance data processing and reporting with Power Automate Desktop, forecasting data processing and reporting with the same system, goods received not invoice, GRNI, data processing with Visual Basic for applications. And I'll also do a comparison of those two systems, Visual Basic for applications and Power Automate Desktop, and other factors to consider when improving these processes using technical RPA. Right, well, we've got three types. We've got the attended version, which automates applications running on a user's desktop to help them complete a process more efficiently. The end user can see this and it's manually triggered. And these are the ones that I'm going to present. There's an unattended version which uses bots, doesn't require any human intervention, can be run on a schedule, which is great. And it only notifies the user when errors occur, usually. Hybrid version is the best of both worlds, and I'm quite interested in that. The employee and bot can work as a team, and they can work on two modes at the same time. So the maximum efficiency is achieved. Not everything can be automated, so you can mix the two. Right, so robotic process automation is suitable for anything that's highly manual, repetitive, rule-based, having standard file types and inputs, low error rate, and is done at the same time every month or every week. Continual, churn of data. So just to highlight this further, here is a flow chart of how to select suitable processes. So basically, if it's highly manual and repetitive, whether or not it's rule-based, and it's common practice to simplify these processes before automating them as well, to try and make things easier to construct. So not always is RPA, the solution. It's probably better to go for something more technical, or there needs to be greater emphasis on system integration. Because it's so new, this is probably the case that the initial groundwork actually needs to be done to get the absolute most out of these systems. Right, the advantages of RPA, I will go on about the disadvantages a bit later. It optimizes resources, increases employee efficiency. There's cost savings, of course. And it also reduces risk due to greater accuracy and compliance. And it actually can transform digitally your legacy applications. So here's my first example of an innovation. I've actually submitted this to the Finance Innovation Forum. And this is one of the first ones I was working with in conjunction with David Boyles at MKUH. He's the Finance Systems Manager. And this is the trial balance data processing and reporting using a Power Automate desktop flow. This was selected because it's run several times at month end whenever a journal is published. And basically, in order to run a report in Oracle applications, it requires multiple parameters. It needs to be queued, and also the data needs to be processed further once downloaded. It's quite an evolved process. The processes I'm about to present really are, and I found that Power Automate on the cloud just didn't have the functionality, so I had to go, Power Automate desktop with the nitty-gritty. Here is the as-is trial balance Oracle process. So the user launches Oracle via Microsoft Edge, then they select standard reports, they invoke a web launcher, then that launches Oracle applications, very much linear. User selects journal's single request and submits the report request with multiple parameters. You can just see there. Wow, lots of scope for error if done in a keyboard flurry. User submits no other requests. So there's several screens to go through basically, and then you get the file downloaded. So in Excel, this is, the user deletes cost centers, trims, cost centers and subjectives. So they can actually be used. User saves a file. There's a decision diamond there, whether or not to go and run subsequent reports. So, one report can be run, or they can continue to do the monthly trust summary and do data checks as well. This is all manual and really quite involved. The actual challenge with automating this particular process were as follows. I mean, it's standardization at the end of the day. Yeah, colleagues can have different links to the main folder. Oracle can run slowly, and colleagues regularly need to reset their passwords on a monthly basis, so that doesn't really help with month end really. Data cleansing needs another template because it had a macro in. The file needs to be saved in the correct location, and files can get overwritten if the process is run more than once. So in order to solve those issues, I trapped errors whenever there wasn't a link to the main folder, the Financial Management General folder. There was also error trapping for password resetting, slow Oracle and incomplete runs. Send keys and simple formula were used to select, delete or trim cost centers and subjectives. Variables were used in the file path, so it's saved in the correct SharePoint folder as you clock over, the next month and the next month, it was dynamic. And file count was used to name each file with the time it was created, so nothing was overwritten, so you've got more than one version of it for auditing purposes. So a 2B process, you see, with the error trapping, there's more kind of decision trees, Has the user complied and given there was some interaction there. It's not a bot, it's an attended process. And if they didn't, enter any kind of file path in there, it would just terminate the process and close all the relevant windows so that it was ready to restart. If Oracle was loading too slowly because of congestion, it would terminate again. If the password needed to reset, you get the opportunity to reset the password, and whether or not the report had run in the requisite time, it's all about working within limits of the system. So the 2B trial balance Excel process, it did all the the processing of the Excel file downloaded within the flow. So it deleted anything beginning with 0 or total. The cost center column, trimmed the subjective, saved the file in the correct folder with the correct nomenclature, and it gave the operator a choice whether or not to continue to run the monthly trust summary report and data check, which is then emailed to head of financial management. So here's an actual video. I hope this runs okay, of the flow running. So I'll click on this and I hope it runs okay. Can everybody see this okay?
I can't see the video. I can see.
Right.
Oh,
okay,
but you got a thumb up. Oh, right. No. I think so. What we've seen is the click of the MP4, but maybe that's because it's sharing the deck, not the screen, potentially.
Yes, that makes sense. Okay, thank you. Because I think I'm going to switch to another screen here. So I'm going to stop sharing this one and share the new window that's opened. Hopefully, if I can find it. All right, a media player. How about that? Is that okay?
Yeah, nailed it.
Okay, thank you. Well, here you go. I've got a couple of videos to show of these Power Automate desktop shows. So this is the trial balance running. So here you go. And that was a security issue, and that's like a servlet. But sometimes you need to put in extra actions to recognize extra images that might go in, and you have to deal with, once it's running.
Must have been quite weird first time you were sitting back and watching this.
Yeah, it is quite strange. You can video Power Automate desktop flows if you kind of isolate it to one screen, of course, because it gets a bit difficult. It's just more than one. This is just PowerShell. I did like a timer. So
Tracy was wondering if this runs in the background, or how does
this was attended basically because of the complexity of the processes. I think the cloud didn't actually, have the functionality that I required, and also because the role is so new, that kind of the infrastructure wasn't quite in place. So I was requesting, more kind of cloud connectors and the like. But yeah, it's just that kind of initial groundwork that's quite difficult to kind of sort out when you're already there. So this was very much kind of desktop based, application based, and in order to share it with other people, I basically saved each flow as a text file and copied and pasted it in people's Power Automate desktops.
Did you have a lot of license access across the desktop?
It was really difficult to get premium because I had to justify it with a project request. So anything new, I'm writing out a project request. So I managed to get that. But I think in retrospect, I think there needs to be an initial kind of project scope sent before this role is kind of, instigated so that everybody has everything in place and they've got, So that's why, I was using Power Automate Desktop, because that's the the free version that everybody has. Well, they did at Milton Keynes. So it's completed in the queue, it's downloaded. As I'll mention later, it really is kind of reliant on each person's specification because it's about image recognition and you need the graphics and the resolution. So everybody's needs to be the same. They can't have like personalized windows because, you know, if you recognize like the taskbar is blue and somebody's gone in dark mode, it's going to fall over. So it's very much different. So it's filtered out anything with an asterisk or a total, and it trims things. So I've got a little message box. Do you want to run the subsequent processes? Yes or no?
So Tracy's asked again, so it's a little bit like a macro, but quicker, question mark?
I actually find the Power Automate desktop macros are actually slower. Because there's a difficulty of being in sync with the other. It's like you're in between two horses galloping along and you've got to try and get them to go at the same pace. Sometimes the web browser goes too slow and lets it down, falls over, or, you know, it's just odd like that. I found macros are a lot quicker, but I find that if you do have some coding skills, they're not obsolete yet. They do help you get the most out of it. Depending on what you're using, because I mainly use the desktop version. So it's a data check. It's kind of selecting anything that's #NA or zeros, and it copies it into the relevant report just to let people know. That's it basically. Successful run. All right, I think that's it. The video's finished. Right, so I need to swap windows. There you go. I'll put a little time in as well. Okay, so stop sharing that and share the presentation again. Okay, so are we back on the presentation now?
We are, yeah.
Richard, thank you. Right, good. Right, so okay, that's it. Right. Okay. So basically, outputs and outcomes. Trial balances were saved to SharePoint, and the monthly trust summaries were emailed with the associated data checks. In total, there's a monthly time saving of about 2.5 hours, and it could be used as an automation template for the PFR because it also uses general ledger balances. So my second example of an innovation was data processing for the forecasting report and also publishing that report on the SharePoint. The rationale for selecting that report, it had different expenditure forecast divisional files. Ranges were fixed for BI pivot and forecast workings tabs, and there wasn't a tolerance calculation. So it's very manual, as is process will show you. Oracle BI is used this time, not Oracle applications. Then they wait for it to load. They log on to Oracle BI. Doesn't need a reset. Yes, no, yeah. Oracle searches for the A120 report, and they open it. They filter it for ledger's short name, entire financial year, minus the adjusted months. User then clicks on OK and downloads a report. So the Excel process, this is quite involved. The user opens the latest version, expenditure forecast divisional file. The user clears the BI tab and then update the tab with the A120, so on, concatenates, cost center and subjectives to users of VLOOKUP, and they set the in-month actual to 0, refreshes the BI pivot, and so on. And it adds any new cost center subjective combos to the end of the forecast workings tab, basically, and then it adds tolerance calculation. So the challenges involved with automating that particular process is not all actions are possible if there isn't any data, and sometimes Oracle BI takes a while to load, especially around month end. Why don't we have departments log on at with staggered logins at certain trusts, logging in at various times to reduce the server congestion? It's just an idea. They go, log on in waves, perhaps. Right. Colleagues can have different links to the main folder on SharePoint again, and there's also issues with colleagues already being logged in or needing a password reset. So I solved those challenges by bypassing actions or terminating the flow with conditional statements. I error trapped whenever there wasn't a link to the main folder, whether slow Oracle BI was occurring or whether or not the password needed resetting. Variables were used for converting calendar dates to financial dates, and that was also useful for the tolerance calculation and knowing which columns to hide. And we also used common tabs, and dynamic ranges were used for the pivots in the formula. So all the data was included. So the 2B forecasting Oracle BI process. So PowerShell was used to obtain the username, and the user inputs the folder path. If it's gone through successfully, then it uses that link to previous expenditure forecast divisional files. So yeah, it finds out whether or not Oracle BI is slow, if they're logged in or it needs to be logged out, start again, need a reset, do not pass go, do not collect £100. Then it filters the A120 file, it gets downloaded, and forecasting in Excel, the user gets to select their division. Now, I was thinking maybe for an attended, well, more of an unattended one, you can have that in a loop to go through each of those divisions. Expenditure forecast divisional processes, and it doesn't run if there's no data for that particular division for that month. I needed to supplement the process using additional Excel macros. So yeah, it corrected the date format, then concatenate the cost center and subjectives, in-month actual. It basically did everything plus the tolerance calculation. So it gets the real Nastro and copies down formula with tolerance check flag, copies down formulas, for the new data, clears the filter, updates the month, hides future actuals and past forecast columns based on the current date. So a lot of conditional formatting, conditional statements, for conversion of calendar dates to financial dates. And then it publishes the file on SharePoint with an end message. And I've got another video to share. Here we go. So I'll open the window and reshare to the new one that's been opened. Okay, so stop sharing, reshare to Windows, media players, there's somewhere. I think it's that one. Can everybody see it okay? Hi, Richard. I think you're on mute.
Classic. I thought I was going to go the whole day without managing to not be the mute.
That's all
we
right.
can all see that. You're all good.
Lovely. Okay, here we go. So I've also submitted this to the Finance Innovation Forum.
So Tracy was wondering if this, like, can this be timed to run? So could it run at 6:30 in the morning, sort of thing, for when you come in for 8? Or how does that?
It's attended. It's attended.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have to be logged in to run it. So you could, but you'd need to be logged in because otherwise you wouldn't get any login details with PowerShell and it would error out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the ideal was to have these run with bots, but it wasn't, you know, the setup wasn't there. I did request it, push it. I went all the way, you know. But often you're going to find that you're the expert and everybody else is just kind of having to learn on the fly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have a hand up question. Carl, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks for letting me come in. I didn't know if you'd let me in whilst this was running, but as everyone took about 5 minutes, I thought I would just jump in and be cheeky. Nina, thanks for showcasing all this. Really interesting to see a live demo.
Thanks.
I've got a couple of questions on it whilst this is running in the background, and I hope I'm not stealing your thunder based on your initial summary that you put up, which was sort of RPA versus VBA. What I'm seeing is a really good showcase of your skill set, your personal skill set.
Thank you.
But the question I've got is because a lot of this is attended.
Yep.
And I noticed on your first one that you ran through, you had a time saving of 2.57 hours. Yeah. But if a lot of it's attended, because looking at your two process flows, you've kind of got your two process flows. You've kind of got your Oracle based one, which is getting the extract of the data out of Oracle, and then you've got an Excel based application, then using macros in the main to create an output file that's acceptable and usable, and then it does some other things like save it down or send it out or do other things in different file locations. Obviously, all that can be done in VBA script. So I'm just wondering, because it is attended, much like the question that's just come in.
Yes.
Is this just a different slant on something that's already there and rebadged? That when I've looked at Power Automate before, I've kind of concluded that one, it feels like slicker and visually more appealing than VBA in code. That it kind of falls into a very similar category when you kind of take the nuts and bolts and maybe the shiny bells and whistles out. And without a true sort of bot, just for context, I work in an ICB where doing some things like bots, which come at quite expensive license fees to be able to have them.
That was the issue, you see, the budget. Wasn't that much, you know.
With all this sort of having to be attended to be able to get into Oracle, it kind of takes that for us. We just thought the time saved wasn't as advantageous versus the cost of a bot if you really wanted to take it into a truly automated process. I was interested in your thoughts on that, and I didn't know if that was your thunder at the end in terms of your sort of overall review.
Well, I just find that at Milton Keynes University Hospital, Power Automate was just a lot more difficult to deal with than like Visual Basic. It's easy to get into, but it's really difficult to master. And it's not just, you know, having the right setup. It depends on the specification of the computer as well, and everybody has to be on board, because if you're doing this and the culture isn't there, you know, it's anything technical, it's not going to be maintained, you know. And it's a shame that so much work and so much testing has gone into this. I've done over 1,000 test flows, you know. It's very much got to be part of the culture. I will mention this later. It's something that, you know, kind of whetting people's appetite with flows, and it's like, yes, but what else, you know. So yeah, I totally agree with the answer. I mean, the question, it's totally needed to be unattended bots. But the infrastructure needed to be there, the connectors needed to be there, because we didn't have anything to connect to, SQL Server, and it's kind of key to have that, set up.
That's really interesting, actually.
Not
especially about the variability of the sort of the setup, the configuration. If people have got different even resolutions on screens or different themes in terms of dark and light, if it starts to fall over, that's a real issue, I think, isn't it? In terms of it being able to run. But really it's really nice actually to see someone run through a full program of what it can do. But because of the time, I was just looking at it thinking, how much quicker is that from someone just downloading data out of Oracle and actually just hitting the macro button that's probably already sort of recorded and written. It looked like the Automate was bridging the two together, really.
Yeah, I mean, ideally you'd have a bot running in the background and it should run swifter.
Yeah.
Rather than having to recognize things and having to get extra variables about the particular user, just because I did get some flows scheduled. I did some other work on the neonatal databases, the Badgernet. That's quite the client haven't got a brilliant connection, so you need reliable processes to automate, but it's just interesting to have those connectors and just see if they work. Anyway, I'll crack on with the rest of it.
Yeah, crack on.
Thank you. I'll see if this actually works. There we go. Okay, so outcomes and outputs of that particular innovation. So we had some expenditure forecast divisional files ready for consolidation, and there was a monthly time saving of 6.5 hours, because quite an involved process, one for each division. But again, this lends itself nicely to a bot that can be put on the loop. Hiding non-standard tabs led to a partially standardized format as well. My final example is the goods received not invoiced report with VBA. It's just data processing because it involves uploading it into Oracle and didn't have the system integration. So this is pre-prep with VBA. I wanted to submit this, but I ran out of time with my contract. So basically, it automates the first column of the subledger, splitting into 6. It was selected because there's a VLOOKUP a division from external file, which the name would keep changing. Multiple layers of description logic for code corrections, prepayments, etc. Splitting out payments. Reports emailed twice, once for comments and once after journal upload. So there's a wait for the comments to come back. The challenges involved with such a process. I mean, colleagues can have different links to the main folder on SharePoint. And you have to ensure the file is saved in the correct location with correct file name. And cost centers and objectives need to be formatted correctly, or else they can't be uploaded into Oracle if all errors out. So I offered the solutions for error trapping whenever there isn't a link to the main folder, and if the file from 2 months ago is not found. Variables were used in the file path, so it's saved in the correct folder each time. GRNI included the cost center hierarchy, so there wasn't an external lookup, so that sped it up a bit. It was okay. Process, and it uploaded it into SharePoint with an email drafted to the AFBPs and FBPs, which I wrote in VBA. So another free macros was used to process GRNI after the comment update. So appropriate descriptions are added and each debit is balanced. And the cost centers and objectives were formatted appropriately. The as-is GRNI process, I think I might be running out of time.
You've got 10 minutes on this.
10 minutes. Okay, that's good. Well, this is actually, it's the as-is GRNI process, because this was successfully handed over to somebody system-minded management accountants at Milton Keynes University Hospital. So the as-is process, they get the latest version, the A9110. It's pasted into the GRNI template, and there is a macro there to clear the file initially. And the first version, GRNI 1, it sends the email with the file for with the latest GRNI reports formatted appropriately. Then after 2 o'clock, all the AFBP comments are collected. Well, they actually work on the live file. The latest GRNI file is opened in Excel with that GRNI template in the background for the macros. Checks the comments are in the collect column. It's more of a manual check. And then there's 3 other subroutines, 2, 3, and 4. And then the journal upload's done, which is still manual. And then journal templates saved in a trust-wide folder. So the first subroutine, it gets the folder path, financial management general folder, and checks if the file from 2 months ago for the comments, because you're doing the previous month, so 2 months ago to get like the previous month's comments, is it there? Has it been named appropriately? Okay, well, if it doesn't, it terminates, and then you have to rename the file properly. So it does sense checks. So it copied the raw tab and renamed the GRNI tab with the correct month name. It splits out column A into 6, and then it inserts the VLOOKUP. VLOOKUPs the comments from that particular file. It changes comments to do not accrue if it fulfills 3 different criteria. So those next 3 squares adds amount and journal headers to the right of current data, copies all the tabs, bar the advanced filter that's used for agency subjective codes to the new workbook. Then it saves the file with the correct monthly file name, drafts the email, and people can sense check it. Then it's gone to AFBPs and FBPs and BCC and the developer just to make sure they're using it. It's a bit cheeky. The second subroutine does a lot more stuff for the DNA comments, and each one gets balanced with a credit against the summed, debit, etc. These are all being slides. GRNI 3, yeah, it does each of those descriptions. It's really quite involved, but this is all done by the macro. GRNI 4, yeah, that's a nice simple one. Saves the file on SharePoint, drafts the email with the hyperlink, and ends with a message. And ready for the journal upload, which is manual still. So obtain the Excel template from previous journals trustwide folder, and it's saved in a particular way, but as that is still manual, well we'll gloss over that one. So outputs and outcomes for the GRNI. You get the file, you get the accrual journal Oracle upload, and there's a monthly time saving of about 1.25 hours. And the journal upload only needs amended for new code combinations, and it's a really long, drawn-out process. It's even more of one without that automation for the data processing. So advantages and disadvantages of VBA versus Power Automate Desktop. Well, Visual Basic has been integrated into Office apps since the late 90s, and it's basically, it's not getting developed any further, but it's got everything. Power Automate Desktop, it's still evolving. It's only been used since 2019, but it's a really exciting tool, but it's not quite there as regards applications. Power Automate Desktop requires an extension to plug into the web browser being used. And Visual Basic, it works the same on every computer. There is no issue, but you test it on yours and you think it's fine working on other people's, and you're going to fall flat on your face, because you're going to find that they've got quad-core laptops and yours is got 10 cores, and it's like, oh God, there needs to be uniformity in, and there also needs to be the infrastructure in order for this to kind of be implemented. Visual Basic for Applications works with all Office apps, but Power Automate Desktop can bridge into web browsers, as mentioned earlier, with that particular plugin. Visual Basic Editors is used to code subroutines and functions, but it's not particularly user-friendly. It's very much a blank canvas, and it might be quite daunting for those that don't have programming experience. So the best thing about Power Automate Desktop, it's low code, no code. You can use actions instead of coding, but you can also use Excel macros, you can call them, if you don't quite have what you want in that particular flow. And code can even be scripted in some actions. You can use VB script, PowerShell, or JavaScript. So factors to consider when improving processes with technical RPA. Silo mentality really does hinder process development, because it inherently requires collaboration with other teams or departments, because they're either, produce or own the data, or they might process it downstream, or they might provide the technical, resources. IT infrastructure is required to scale and protect these processes, to protect against staff attrition and make sure it continues. There's training investment required, basically, so to get the most out of RPA. Some coding skills are still needed. And I found that process absolutely need to be standardized and simplified for automating. There's no point in doing different versions for different divisions. You need to have it the same for each, or reach general consensus, and then you could run it on a loop with a bot, and it's no fuss whatsoever. It just needs so much more testing. Power Automate Desktop, they're not as robust and require way more, testing before user acceptance. Basically, they often lose focus when recognizing images and require selection of alternative actions and delays so that they're in sync with the apps they interact with. Users' graphics and display settings need to match those of the developer, i.e. with no scaling or personalization. So if you'd like to have it on magnified, it will fall over. So I put in actions, to maximize the resolution and revert back to what they were beforehand. So, what Power Automate Desktop does need some remove scaling actions that need it on larger. But that's it, everybody. I hope you found it of use to kind of find out about, what you can achieve with Power Automate Desktop, but it does come with some caveats, and it's probably not what you want to hear entirely.
It's the good, the bad, and the efficient. The title was on purpose, I think. So that's been right. Really, really helpful, Nina.
Thank you.
You've got lots of claps in the
thank you
from the audience as well. Yeah, that was really interesting. We've got a bit of a VBA, Power Automate Desktop rivalry going on here, so I'm sure people will weigh in later on. And I encourage you, if you are, let's say, opinionated in this area, to please participate and volunteer for the Safe House discussion, to sort of trying to evolve and look at this role in more detail. The forms posted in the chat earlier on, and I'll drop it in a minute. But we're going to move on to our next speaker. Nina, thanks so much. And pleased to welcome Paul Ingham from the NHS BSA. And I won't steal any thunder, but